Okay.
Are we good?
We are. Sorry, it's telling me to remove stuff. Oh, okay. All right, technology. Thank you so much. Yikes. Okay, I see what's going on.
It's always something, right?
Like,
No worries.
we were doing so well. Okay. All right, now we've been live this whole time. Oh no. Oh no. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us at Chats During Naps. I get to interview this amazing coach today, Kayla Lyon. Kayla, thank you so much for joining us. And let's kick it off while our children are still asleep. So, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun. The short version is I was in the Navy for 10 years. I am now a mom and a life coach and an active duty Marine wife. So we've got a lot going on. I've got a 3.5-year-old, almost 2-year-old, and I've got number 3 coming in a couple months, and we are gearing up for a cross country move next week. That was unexpected. So
Wow.
that's like kind of a truncated version. I'm a life coach. I help mostly military women figure out how to do it all without running around with their hair on fire all the time. So uh, any version of military life, whether you're active duty or a veteran or a spouse or a reservist, comes with unique challenges. And so I help these women figure out and actually enjoy the ride instead of just counting down the days until retirement or separation.
Right. No, and that is so helpful and needed because the statistics around military spouses is really alarming. More than half, close uh, over 50%. Maybe my numbers are a little low. Are considered unemployed. Right? There's no employment for them. And when you mention the unique challenges, can you share just a couple with the audience, because there are a lot of people out there that don't understand, well, what unique challenges are, there for military spouses and family members outside of a deployment,
Yeah, I mean, deployment's definitely a big one. I mean, I mentioned before we went live that my husband just got home from a deployment about a week ago. And we're in California right now, and our entire families are on the East Coast. So I was kind of alone and unafraid. And we moved here like right before the pandemic happened. So I didn't have a
Wow.
chance to kind of establish that community and that support network and all that before the world shut down. So just even without a pandemic, just the nature of picking up and moving every couple of years and having to reestablish the kids, and even if you don't have kids, your job, if you don't have a remote job, that's why the unemployment numbers are so high, right? Because if you do have kids and you move away from your support network, working outside the home gets very challenging very quickly. And even if you do have a remote job, you still need to show up for it every day, right? So like even if you're in your
Right.
house, you still have to have all of the pieces in place with childcare and school and drop offs and all that kind of stuff. And then when 50% of your, when your partner is gone, that just kind of piles onto it.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
definitely a big piece of it. And any parent can tell you that it definitely takes a village to raise children. So when you
Oh,
when you
yeah.
have to pick up and move and reestablish your village every couple of years, um, it can be challenging and isolating, both just from like a physical, like kind of like support kind of way, but also like mentally. And that's something that I really discovered myself last summer, kind of through everything.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's one of the main reasons why I really like dove headfirst into this space, is because there's just it's such a prevalent, common issue. And there are so many wives who, like you were saying, or spouses who are not employed either by necessity, like just kind of necessity, just because of life, or by choice, but they're highly qualified, they're highly educated, they have so much potential and so much to
Yeah.
give that they would like to, but don't have the or haven't been able to figure out how to make it all work and how to fit it all together. So
Right. Yeah. And, you know, I'm just gonna recreate this picture that you painted. You moved to another city, or excuse me, across the country away from your support system right before pandemic hit, and you're basically, shuttered in with the kiddos 24/7. It takes a certain amount of mental toughness, right, to be able to focus on business and the kids. When did you realize, like, this is it? You know what? Um, I'm going to channel all of my passion into this practice, and I'm not going to um, put this on the back burner or take a back seat while I have the kids in a pandemic.
um it's it's that's a great question. My road to get here, I'm gonna try and keep this short and sweet, but it's when I left active duty, I had a major identity crisis, and I got out
Mhm,
before I had my first child. And I was kind of expecting it, but like not to the level that it happened. And so
mhm,
it took me years to kind of figure out what I was going to do and who I was going to be. And like then I was a mom, and I'm a Marine wife
mhm.
now, but and like there was something that was missing. And so I went on this like very windy path that ultimately led me to coaching. And that's my personal silver bullet for me. Um, but to get more specific to your question, during the pandemic, like that was instead of kind of like, it would have been very easy to kind of press pause, um, just with everything going on. And I think a lot of people, especially parents, but non-parents too, like kind of probably experience that. But that was
Mhm.
kind of my outlet, if you will. Like I love my
Yeah.
kids more than anything, but my work was like kind of like my outlet from just being a mom, right? Like it kind of gave me
Mhm.
something else to focus on and to kind of like channel my adult brain to, if you will, right? Like I
Yeah.
love rolling around with
Right.
them and doing puzzles and building with blocks, but sometimes I'm like, I need something for me. Um, and so working with my clients, one, it very like rudimentally gave me like some adult interaction, which was very helpful.
Mhm. Right.
But being able to work through it on my own, like do my own work, but then also help my clients work through their stuff as well, is insanely rewarding.
Right.
And so that is really what fueled me to keep going and to double down instead of letting off the letting off the gas.
No, that's awesome. You know, I Switching gears, I have a quick question. And this is a little controversial, but it doesn't really get talked a lot about. Um, is the other mom judgment. We both have like young kids. We both have young kids. And I can't tell you how many times the phrase, that's why I didn't start my business until they were older, so I could spend time with them while they're this young. And that kind of feels like you know, a little bit, right? How do you
It's
how
funny
do
you
you
bring that up.
Mhm.
I so the a huge piece of my own work from last summer, and particularly last fall, because my kids were able to go. My oldest is 3.5. My son is about to be 2. So he was barely, not even, he was like 17 months when I was able to start them both back into preschool last fall. I had so much drama and guilt about my daughter was like very ready and she needed it, but sending my son to, I had so much drama and guilt about it for all of the reasons you just mentioned. And because I was a terrible mom and I didn't want to be with my kids all the time and all this other stuff. And so that is where I did the bulk of my own personal work in probably the last 6 months or so, like conveniently, like when my husband was gone and I was like, oh, like I actually need some help and it's okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a thing for sure. And I have learned, and I have to practice this continuously, and I teach my clients this all the time, is like what other people think about you is just none of your business. And you need to do what's right for you. And I think intellectually we all know that, but it's so hard to actually like truly embody and truly believe and take on board. But I finally like got very specific about what my definition for me of a good mom was and what that looks like for me. And let me tell you what, before like stop not working was not like when I was not working and when I was on the fence about like, do I go all in? Do I pause? You know, kind of like trying to figure all this out last year. Me not working did not equal me showing up as the best version of myself for my children because I was in such, you know what I mean? Like you get in this tiny little room and that is not how, that was just not conducive for me at all. And that works for some people and that's amazing. And I was just not one of them. So when I finally made peace with that and I realized that I'm doing what's best for me and what's best for my children, and I truly believe that and I truly got on board with that, then everybody else's opinions stopped mattering. But it was a windy road to get there for sure.
Yeah. No, I just thank you. Thank you for your candor on that topic because especially if you are an entrepreneur with young kids, there it is. There's so much judgment.
Right.
I am thankful, grateful that you give yourself grace and have, just put the haters in the back where they belong, right?
Right.
So many switching gears again, so many entrepreneurs jump right into starting a business and measure success by the quantity of money that they're bringing in, right? And that's not necessarily the case all the time. It's not always about the money. What is your measure for success?
For me right now, that's a really good question. So money is a great kind of like evaluation tool just because it's very like math, right? Like it's just very it's very easy to have a lot of drama about it, but you can also just strip it away and it's literally just numbers on a page. So it is helpful. It's a helpful like measurement tool to kind of like evaluate what's working and what's not and like where you need to pivot for sure. But at the end of the day, like even in the beginning, it's always been about like my driving factor has been about like service to my clients. And that's coaching is such a beautiful fit for me coming out of the Navy because that was like all the good stuff about being in the Navy and leading my sailors and all that. And so now I just kind of translate that into my clients. So when I even just like if I have one person who has a breakthrough or is able to shift the trajectory of their life, I started out doing a lot of money specific coaching actually, because that's kind of like my natural zone of genius, if you will. And I've transitioned a little bit because money touches absolutely everything. So I end up coaching on everything. But so that's really my measure of success for me personally. I know that sounds like very like kind of cheesy and like woo woo, but it's when I get to see like my clients like making progress and like literally changing the trajectory of their lives. If like you're on a cross country flight or if you're on a sailboat in the ocean, like you move a little bit, 1 degree on your path in one direction or another, you'll end up in a completely different place. And that's what I see in my clients every day. Like sometimes they have huge breakthroughs, but most of the time it's just little tiny course corrections as we go. And they end up in a completely different, more intentional place. And so that's my measure of success for me personally.
No, that's awesome because yeah, it's more than just the dollar value. Yeah, that's important. But like you mentioned, it's you seeing your clients make that huge mind shift change either over time or in one of your sessions. Um,
Absolutely.
what do you recommend? Um, because you started with money mindset. What do you recommend startups should consider in terms of budgeting when first starting out?
I'm a huge fan of the Profit First mentality and the Profit First book by Mike Michalowicz. Um,
Hmm.
I think it depends on, like, I feel like that's geared more towards, like, his book specifically is geared more towards like product based businesses that have like or like brick and mortar that have like a lot more overhead. It can
Hmm.
absolutely be applied to service based businesses for sure. Um, I personally have taken that and implemented it, and then I've tweaked it in a little bit in a couple different ways to make it kind of fit with my like growth goals and my business model specifically. But I always like to recommend starting there because it just gives you a good, a really good framework and a good kind of like big picture mindset outlook on like how to build your business from the beginning, so it doesn't turn into like this money eating monster that's going to end up sucking more from you than
Right.
giving to you, right? Like, you never
Right.
expect it's kind of like a baby, right? You like, you can't expect your baby to like start taking care of you right off the bat. You have to care for it and nurture it for a while, and then it will care for you. And I feel like your business is very similar in that. Like, you can't start like taking out of it from the very beginning. But if you set up practices and habits from the beginning to facilitate that long term growth and make sure that you keep your expenses and profit balanced properly, then
Mhm.
you don't end up with this like monster that's like sucking the life out of you, which I feel like happens so often in entrepreneurship. And it's so like, it breaks my heart, because you have
Mhm.
these amazing ideas and like, you just like, as a business owner, you just want to like put your value
Yeah.
into the world and like help people and like serve your clients and your customers, like with either product or service, or like, you want to solve their problem with however your business does it. And then to
Mhm.
see the business kind of get out of control and take over is just, it makes me sad.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right? Like, we go into
Yeah.
business thinking, "Oh, it's gonna be great for our lifestyle," and then
Mhm.
it's worse off than your 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you mentioned, um, you really came into your own, last summer in 2020. What challenges did you experience when you first started out?
Um, I think a lot of it probably stems from a little bit of imposter syndrome. It's like,
Mhm.
I've never done this before. Who am I to help these people? Or even kind of getting down into like the nuts and bolts about just like basic like marketing and how do I, get out there, and getting over the fear of, just sharing what I'm doing publicly in order, and just talking about it, like all that stuff that I think
Yeah.
so many entrepreneurs experience in the beginning. I was in the middle of all of it, and I still, like, to a degree, have to kind of work through some of that stuff as I go. Um, but yeah, it's just, I think the biggest thing is just like staying in belief that, like, and just trusting myself and like knowing that it's working, and there's always going to be people who are not my people and are going to be
Mhm.
haters, and like we talked about earlier, just kind of like, just pushing them to the back and not giving them my focus,
Yeah.
and just remembering like the big picture, and that keeps me trudging forward for sure.
Yeah. No, I think it's a little harder for folks in the military starting out, personally, because, especially if you have like a top secret clearance or any type of clearance, you're taught to minimize your social media profile, right? And then you get out and you're in business and you're like, you need social media. And you're like, I don't feel too comfortable with that.
Yep. That was 100% me. I was like, I've spent the last over 10 years of my life
Yeah.
minimizing my internet presence as much as possible. And now I have to just flip that on a dime and just broadcast everywhere. I'm like, what?
Right.
Yes, that was exactly me. And I'm still working on that to a degree. Like, I'm still pretty careful about like what I share, and I don't, there's a fine line between like being relatable and like sharing your personal story, but then not, airing
Yeah.
your dirty laundry to the world. So
Right, right. You may do some like, oh man, the hot mess mama moments, right? But we don't need to broadcast that. We don't need to
right,
confess, right?
right, right.
Um,
Oh, it's so true.
yeah. So, how has COVID impacted your business?
Well, I mean, there's always like the financial piece of it. And like, I found that moms in particular, but I think women in general just have been very socialized to like not want to invest in themselves and their self-care.
Mhm.
And like, I mean, you know what I mean? I think that's just a very kind of common thing that you see across the board. So that, and then if you have been like impacted financially through all of this, that obviously um, can make it a little bit more challenging. But at the same time, like the need for just mind, like m- managing your mind and maintaining like your mental health has never been greater, right? Like, so
Mhm.
like the industry as a whole, like the life coaching industry as a whole has really taken off because people are really um I mean kind of like we were talking about earlier, right? Like you're all of a sudden you're in a box and so many people are like, you know, both partners are working from home and your kids are homeschooled. It's like it's the perfect it's like a pressure cooker for all of your stuff
Mhm.
to come up. And if you don't know how to kind of manage it properly and deal with your emotions and kind of navigate through all of that, it all sounds like very mushy, but
Right.
if you don't do it well, it's gonna boil over. It's gonna come to a head very quickly and boil over. So um from that perspective, it's actually, I don't want to say it's been good because that sounds terrible, but you know what I mean? Like it's it's like Zoom has taken off, right? Um, so it's not good, but I think the kind of general shift, I think we're still very much in the middle of it, and I think we still have a long way to go. But I think the highlight on mental health in general has broadened, and like the spotlight has gotten a lot brighter, and we've seen, you know, like all of the very just devastating statistics about like suicides and attempts and all
Mhm.
that kind of stuff, especially in, you know, younger people, like younger adults and kids. And anyway, that's a whole nother ball of wax. But in general,
Right.
like the um just the highlight of the importance of mental health and like really taking care of yourself, and not in like I'm going to go take a bubble bath kind of way, which there's nothing wrong with, but really like truly taking care of yourself has been um I feel like it's been accelerated through the last year. So
Yeah.
being in
And
that business is helpful right now.
yeah, I agree. I agree with you. It's not good, but more people are finding value in the services you provide, and that's what
Absolutely.
matters. Um,
Absolutely.
and so it's like the growth of Instacart. Instacart was not supposed to achieve these numbers until like
Right.
5, 10 years in the future. But
Right.
when this happened, people are like, "Oh, I don't want to go to the groceries. I need Instacart."
Right.
So that's what I liken the life coaching industry, right? It's like people didn't
Absolutely.
realize they needed it until this happened. So I'm glad that people are taking care of their mental health. And by the way, uh, you hit the nail on the head when it came to um, women. And I'm trying to say this without sounding judgmental because I'm not being judgmental. Uh, is that we put our self care in the back on the back burner, right? And
Yep.
I think especially if you're a mom, right? You want to make
Yep.
sure the kids are taken care of, your spouse is taken care of, and then
Yep.
if there's some left over, right?
Yep.
And then money mindset is a hard one for spouses as well, especially the not the main income earner.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
and I see a lot of times, back when I was selling insurance, I saw a lot of times where the wife was like, "Oh, I don't handle any of the financial stuff in the house. He does all of that."
Yep.
And I also see that part where, God forbid, the spouse passes away. unexpectedly, and then the wife is scrambling to figure out how to pay the mortgage, how to pay the light bill. Where are
Yep.
their financial documents? Like they don't know where anything is. And so how much of your work is also um, empowering them to become maybe not, stockbrokers, obviously, but like more interested in those numbers that they just kind of gave to their husband
So
or
much of
spouse,
it.
excuse me.
So much of it. I'm glad you brought that up because yeah, I do a lot of work around that. And it's funny because in my family, it's a little bit, not a little bit, very much the opposite. Like I've always just been the one who handles all that stuff because my husband's very like, we have very similar money mindsets. And so like financially, we don't butt heads very often, which is very convenient.
Mhm.
But I'm definitely the money nerd in the family. And so I've always just kind of naturally handled that. And then when I left active duty and he's gone all the time on TADs and training and deploying, it made more like I was the continuity, right? So it made more sense for me to be the one handling all this stuff because I never had to worry about him not being around to, pay a bill or something because I just handled it.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but to your point, I realized a couple of years ago that if something happened to me, he would be able to figure it out, but it would be really painful, right? And so like
Yeah.
I set up we have in a case of emergency binder, which is just like a big document with all the stuff and like where our, who our kids' doctors are and where the office, like all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And like all of our accounts and where everything is. Like I said, he could figure it out. He like knows what's going on a broad level, but it would be a giant pain in the butt for him while
Mhm.
dealing with the loss of his life partner, right? Like you know what I
Right.
mean? It's like that's already a really
Yeah.
terrible situation to begin with, and then we keep going. Um, so I do a lot of work on that. But the biggest thing I think that I see with wives in particular, again, like spouses in general, but specifically with women, and like you said, with active duty spouses, is that when they're stay at home moms and they don't have an income, it's always his money. And I don't have the money for that. And I don't have an income. So I can't do
Mhm.
this. And so one of the big things that I work on shifting with them and their mindset is it's our money just because you're not the one bringing in. Like if you think of like I always refer to the show The Office just because it's one of my favorites. Like, but in any business, like you've got like the salespeople and they're the ones who are physically bringing in the money, and then you've got like HR and accounting and the managers, and they're not bringing in the money, but they still get
Mhm.
paychecks and they don't feel guilty about it, and they
Right.
earn their keep, so to speak, just as much as the salespeople. And it's the same in a partnership, right? Like my husband could not afford to pay me for all of the things that I do to run our
Right.
family while he's
Right.
gone and while he's working a million hours a week with the kids and the cooking and the cleaning, all that stuff. Like if I died and he had to start paying somebody to do that, like he couldn't afford it.
Mhm.
Right. And
Right.
so just because you're not bringing the money in doesn't mean that you don't have any money. And so that mindset shift alone can be very empowering to
Mhm.
then want to step in and just be more aware and be more involved and be more educated about the family financial situation in the event that something terrible happens.
Wow. No, I love your analogy of like, hey, there's sales, but then there's also HR. You are the HR, you're the admin, and that's
Right.
awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna quote you. I'm gonna quote you going forward. That's right. Uh, can you we're getting towards the top of our time today, but do you have ah let's see. Can you share with us what work-life balance really means for you?
I have, and I wish I could take credit for this philosophy, but I learned it from my own coach. But my philosophy around balance is less about actually being balanced now and more about being intentionally unbalanced. And what I mean
Mm,
is like there's different seasons of life, and sometimes the season might be like a week, and sometimes it might be a year or a couple
mhm,
that you're going to want to like shift focus a little bit. For example, for me right now, like we're moving across the country in a week and I'm due with my third baby in the beginning of July. So like the next 2 months, like while I'm still working and I'm still, serving my clients and marketing and working on my business, like I'm intentionally being unbalanced in favor of my personal life for the next little bit for those
mhm,
reasons. Whereas, 6 months from now, or, by the end of the year, hopefully I'll be able to shift back a little bit towards being a little bit more unbalanced in favor of my business to then really work on like reaching more people and helping, and growth and that sort of thing. So, I mean,
Mhm.
perfect example is like my husband deployed. Obviously, his balance was heavily in favor of work that whole time. And then
Mhm.
now he's shifting back a little bit. So instead of trying to be perfectly even keeled all the time and like have all the pie completely divided up evenly, which I've
Mhm.
found to be impossible, to be quite honest. So if anybody's
Yeah.
figured that out, let me know. um, when I kind of shifted my mindset around that and my approach and decided to just be intentional about how I'm unbalanced, that's one, it serves the season of life that I'm in much better, but it
Mhm.
also serves me better. Like I'm not feeling really guilty about it. Like I made the intentional choice instead of it just happening by accident. And so I'm at peace with my decision because I know I'm doing the right thing for myself and my family and my business. And so I'm
Mhm.
able to, again, like just kind of brush the haters aside a little bit easier, um,
Yeah.
and just be at peace with my own decisions.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Okay. Kayla, what what are some final words that you want to share with our audience today?
Oh, that's such a good that's such a good question. There's so many things. Um, I think probably the biggest takeaway that I can offer is that it's really amazing what you can do when you learn how to manage your mind properly. And I know that sounds kind of like airy fairy, but when you kind of take a step back and you really like invest in yourself and you take care of yourself, it's amazing like what else is possible. Like just from reducing overwhelm and stress to God, financial stress is something that I deal with all the time with my clients. That's such a big one. Like when you take the time to like slow down long enough to really truly figure out what the cause of the problem is and then solve it correctly, like so it sticks for good, so then you can speed up much quicker. It's so worth the time because that's where you can really change the trajectory of your life in the best way and like make sure you put yourself on the path that you want to be and not the one that you just kind of are on by accident. That makes sense.
That makes sense. Kayla, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you all for tuning in to Chats During Naps. And we hope you gain so much value out of it. If you are looking for a life coach or you want to hear more about how Kayla can help you out, check out her link below that's scrolling by. Uh,
Absolutely.
right. Kayla, again, always a pleasure. And we'll chat soon. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Thanks so
everyone.
much for having me.
All right. Bye.